Live from the Mandalay Bay Convention Center in Las Vegas, it's theCUBE, covering VMworld 2016. Brought to you by VMware and its ecosystem sponsors. Now, here are your hosts, John Furrier and Stu Miniman.
Okay, welcome back everyone. We are live in Las Vegas for VMworld 2016. This is SiliconANGLE Media's theCUBE. It's our flagship program. We go out to the events and extract the signal from noise. I'm John Furrier, Stu Miniman, and we are here live with Sunil, Potti, who's the Chief Product and Development of Nutanix, and Poojan Kumar, who's the co-founder and CEO of PernixData, now part of Nutanix. Congratulations, Nutanix purchased your company. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome
Thank
to
you,
theCUBE.
John.
Good to see you guys again. CUBE alumni, both of you. So give us a scoop. Give us the news. You guys were acquired. What's the story?
So yeah, it's been around 4.5, 5 years since we started the company, and both these companies have been very complementary in what they did. Software companies, one selling an appliance, one selling pure software, and so we figured that we'll align both the missions together and really be part of something that's a big movement in replatforming the data center.
Sunil, what's the motivation behind the purchase? Obviously from a product standpoint, is it fill a white space? Is it strategic? Obviously customers and the product fit. Give us some color on the acquisition, why, how does it impact the platform for Nutanix?
Happy to do so, happy to do so. So I think if you look at Nutanix's ambition about what we unveiled at .next about the enterprise cloud, rather than just focus on the convergence of storage, compute, virtualization, what we think is something that we pioneered in our first act for the last 5 years, our next act is about convergence of public and private clouds. And essentially it's a convergence of the consumption model and the delivery model, whether it's CapEx or OpEx, essentially the right cloud for the right workload. And so for that, at the heart of it are two things in our opinion, as we build towards that. The first thing is to ensure that one can understand the right workload characteristics so that we can then determine the right infrastructure to deliver it. And to do that, you essentially need a transparent but a thoughtful way to analyze the workload working set, for example, and then prescribe the right architecture for deploying that workload. And so that was the first requirement. The second requirement is once you get that idea, the next step is to actually seamlessly and transparently migrate that workload from wherever it is today to the new architecture, whether the new architecture is from a traditional 3-tier to a traditional, the next generation hyper-converged infrastructure, or to a public cloud of your choice, right? So that if a workload is an elastic workload, then it makes sense to deliver it as an OpEx, as a public cloud architecture. If it's a predictable workload, it probably makes sense to actually use an architecture like Nutanix is on the web scale side. So the second thing is about enabling this transparent but seamless migration in one click. Think about it as a vMotion for the next era, right? So as the underpinning for both those characteristics, which is to understand the characteristics of the workload so that you can then choose the right cloud for the right workload, and then to enable that migration from your traditional infrastructure to that next generation infrastructure. PernixData's technology is central to that particular capabilities. And our goal is to essentially leverage that capabilities, overlay it into our portfolio to deliver that convergence of public and private clouds.
All right, so Sunil, maybe let's just step back for a second. Give us a little bit from kind of a Nutanix company update. Everybody knows you filed the S1, waiting to an IPO, but you just acquired 2 companies. You've taken a little bit of a loan there, so, when's the IPO happening? Why 2 acquisitions at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a multitude of questions there. Let me just break that down. I think on the product/market strategy, the way we look at this is a 3-dimensional sort of view, which is one dimension is on the product feature side about elevating it from hyperconvergence to include virtualization to include this convergence of clouds, and that's where the acquisitions fit in, both PernixData and Calm.io. The other dimension is about delivering the capability on a multitude of platforms. So one of the new things that we announced recently is to extend beyond the Nutanix NX family and the Dell and Lenovo families to also have Nutanix run on Cisco UCS. And a lot of that was actually because of customer demand from our joint customers asking for it. We did a great launch at the Cisco Sales Conference with widespread adoption between their sales team and the partners. And the last dimension is about the go-to-market, which is about expanding beyond enterprise into service providers, the robo segment, the SMB segment. And as we scale the company from when we talked about the enterprise cloud vision, the IPO obviously is a chapter in the next step of our journey. We can't speak in too many details about it. the way we look at the evolution of the company going forward is we have a real opportunity now armed with some technologies complementing our core foundational capabilities to essentially increase the value proposition that we offer to our existing customers while enabling new customers to more seamlessly migrate from their traditional architectures to Nutanix.
Yeah, so, Sunil, I want to follow up. You mentioned the Cisco support. So Nutanix has done the testing. Customers have been asking. I know you've got a large Cisco channel partner that's supportive of this too.
Yes.
But I want you to comment because I look at Cisco's reaction, and it reminds me a little bit about the Nutanix VMware relationship. There's a little bit of friction. There's a little bit of tug back and forth. I mean, both Cisco and VMware sound like they're important for you from a standpoint, but the engagement's not as clean as some might think.
Yeah, I think the Cisco. I think the potential partnership there is a little, in my opinion, more of a fertile ground or adoption right now, because I think there's genuinely a 1 + 1 = 3 value proposition there. I think in the initial stages, obviously, between Cisco's own portfolio of products versus, say, Nutanix products, there'll be some friction. But I think, look, at the end of the day, as large companies expand and emerging companies expand, there will be areas of conflict and areas of overlap. And our goal is to focus on the areas of overlap. And in the case of Cisco, particularly, it started off with like 4 or 5 flagship customers of Cisco asking us to do this. In fact, that's how Cisco allowed us to actually validate and test some of the stuff, with many of their engineering folks actually supporting this effort. I think, the feedback that we've seen with our joint channel partners, in fact, Cisco's largest channel partners are all over this solution. So our expectation is, look, in the next 3 to 6 months, let the market decide. And I'm sure that as partners looking at it long term, we'll come together.
All right. So, Poojan, you've got a really interesting background. You spent some time at Oracle. You've been at VMware. Yep. You did a startup, and now Nutanix is trying to become a new platform in kind of the changing ecosystem. Give us your viewpoint with kind of looking back as to where we are, what's important to the users. I guess did things change from when you started PernixData and kind of the opportunity that brought you to Nutanix?
Yeah, a lot of questions there. So I think I'll start off with, these two companies coming together, and the goal would be to take that 1 + 1 = 3, right, mindset. And Nutanix has this thing where even though they've been very successful in what they've done so far, the ambition is big. And so when the ambition is that big, it's really about now, getting all this, inorganic, so to speak, forces within the company and really getting that founder's mentality, so to speak, back when Dheeraj and other folks had started the company. And that's really what I'm excited about, which is, how can we take the company from where it is and take it to the journey at 10x the size? And that will only happen if we can really execute on some of these visions that, Sunil talked about, where we can just build that, one-click, vMotion of the next decade, where we can blur the lines between the private and public clouds and really deliver on the Nutanix enterprise cloud vision. And those are the things that really excite me. And some of the technologies that we have built are really going to be the fundamental building blocks behind delivering those visions.
Okay, so it sounds like can you unpack a little bit how some of those products fit in? Because I've heard some people say, is this an acqui-hire? You guys have some great storage kernel expertise in the company, which will definitely help for kind of future development. But what is kind of the important stuff for today and down the road? And maybe you answer and Sunil can follow up.
Yeah, so I'll take a stab at it. So basically, obviously, since this has been in the news for a long time, but really, it got done last week, right? It's also not completely closed yet, so it happens in the next 2 weeks. So some of the things, obviously, we are figuring out, but bottom line, what I'll tell you is, don't only look at what is visible, out there. Sure, we have the analytics product, which is really relevant for the non-HCI environments, and we had the performance product, so to speak, the FPP product. But really, if you double-click into it, there is a lot of capabilities that the company has built, and those are the capabilities that are going to become the fundamental building blocks for the future that we're going to build together. So I'll leave it at that for now.
I think just to add on to what Poojan said, the way we look at this is I think there are some tactical opportunities always in helping accelerate traditional 3-tier architectures. Our focus isn't about that. Our focus is, if anything, to focus on we fundamentally think that workload inertia in terms of migration to the new architecture is about data. And if you can unlock workloads with a way to seamlessly unlock the data inertia portion, which is where a bunch of the technology from Pernix combined with our technology come into bear, I think that's where our forces will be aligned to, is to really enable that workload mobility across old to new web scale architectures or old to net new public cloud architectures.
So one of the things that Pat Gelsinger was talking about in his keynote here at VMworld is obviously the interclouding or cross-cloud. I forget what we call it interclouding, but multiple clouds. As customers look to the future, they've always been focused on performance in the data center. You guys have done an amazing job there, simplifying everything. But performance in the cloud is a really big deal. Can you guys share your thoughts on that? Because that's kind of a working area for operators right now. We're in the ops side saying, okay, if we have, say, a multiple clouds, they have to decide architecture. They got to think about things like, okay, I might have a workload here or there. Performance hits might be on the horizon. They're nervous. There's some FUD out there. What were your thoughts on there relative to cloud in general and performance? Is it an issue or not?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you could, for everybody that complains about security, for example, over the last 5 years with cloud, Amazon has shown that there's so many other secure apps that are running widely on it. I think security and performance are mostly temporal issues, in my opinion, over the next 5-10 years, right? Sure, are there going to be issues around performance for running Oracle RAC-like environments on an AWS environment? Sure, probably, but I think if anything, the higher order bit is about the texture of the workload mapping to the cost and the financial economics, while keeping the simplicity and the elasticity of just ability to start quickly, start small, and then pay as you grow, right? And so the way we look at this is, frankly, that there are some workloads that performance-wise today may not be a right click for the public cloud, but from an economics, from an agility side, they are.
Trade-off, basically.
Right? Yeah. And so it may be better for them to move internally to a high-performant architecture, but with a set of APIs that over a period of time, they can elastically move into the public cloud, because that's the ideal way to actually leverage that particular high-performance workload for its elasticity from a consumption model that's OpEx versus sticking to a traditional CapEx plus OpEx.
So performance is a situational issue for them relative to how they deploy or architect, not so much a pure hit, per se.
I think security and performance, if anything, are, like I said, temporary stumbling blocks. So maybe whatever even Nutanix does initially, taking a workload and landing on a Nutanix on-premise to solve for performance issues, is actually still the first step. The second step is actually to free the workload to say, look, if this is a truly elastic workload, I need to spin up 1,000 machines for 10 hours, then the right answer for that is to actually use the compute cycles from a public cloud, right? So,
what are the top 3 conversations you guys are having with customers? Obviously you have your business, you're doing getting under the hood, if you will, making things run great. But relative to kind of this economic and the trade-offs that go on, there's all these conversations that need to be happening. How would you boil them up in terms of top 3 customer conversations around this kind of multi-architectural or multi-environment situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty broad question. I would say, I don't know if I have 3 things, but let me just tell you whatever number that we run into, which is, the first thing is about, I think, IT, as in the VP of IT and the CTO or CIO, are figuring out what is their role in the next 5 years. In terms of when they convert to their business, they have a top line driver and a bottom line driver. Pretty much every CIO, right? So what they're looking for is a strategy that will help them in both dimensions, not just in one of them. And so in the bottom line dimension, clearly there's a whole bunch of ROI, TCO around leveraging net new architectures. But also, if you can provide an ability for them to handhold or at least get closer to their business counterparts in terms of delivering applications so that they can forgo the mundaneness of traditional IT operations. To me, the way I summarize it is every CIO should become a CAO, a Chief Amazon Officer, right? In that sense, whether it's a logical Amazon or a physical Amazon. And I think if they put themselves in that mode of thinking, I think the choices that they're going to make in terms of vendors, in terms of architectures, in terms of apps, will automatically have a true north in which they have to orient themselves for the top line and the bottom line. I don't know, Poojan, if you had anything to add to it.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to, and that's where I love the Nutanix vision around the invisible infrastructure, right? To your performance question, the understanding workloads, multi-tenant environments, what should I run in my private cloud, what should I run in my public cloud? Those are the kind of things that you need to make it invisible for the end user, and that's the journey that we need to take the customer.
That's a goal. That's a great goal. It should be invisible.
Exactly, right. And so that's really, I think, combining all of these things and really working on that. If you can do that, that's where you kind of free the CIO or the VP of technology from the mundane tasks so that they can really focus on what's really valuable for the business.
Yeah, the apps themselves.
Exactly.
And how does it impact personnel? Thoughts on this? We always talk about autonomous cars. Oh, jobs going to get automated away with AI and machine learning. But in IT, that is also a shift that's happening. The personnel roles are changing. Thoughts?
No, look, I think as we embark on replatforming the data center or replatforming the enterprise, I think inevitably most of IT have to replatform themselves, right? I mean, I was just at the conference just looking at some sessions, and there were a couple of customers at the background, and the session that they picked was about, how do I use Power CLI and PowerShell, right? So, for example, that's a classic administrator coveting development, coveting programming, right? So I think it's already obvious that most of our customers are trying to move up the stack themselves in terms of both scope as well as abilities. So I think that is how...
Operationally, too. I mean, that's really where they're digging in.
Yeah. So I think that wave is already happening in terms of, rather than focus on operating the infrastructure, focus on programming it and delivering it. And frankly, it's an interesting value proposition for many of the traditional admins to actually move up the stack. Right?
Is there anything that you guys could share in terms of customers around what's hot out there that people may or may not be looking at? I mean, it's always a fear of missing a trend. There's a lot of stuff going on IoT. The IT guys are under a lot of pressure to move up the stack. I totally agree. Invisible infrastructure, DevOps, and or cloud ops as it evolves. Is there things going on that you see from a trend standpoint that are like, hey, don't miss out on that?
Look, I'll talk about one thing that we're seeing and sort of orienting ourselves a little bit, and then Poojan, you can comment as well. Yeah. So look, I think this whole concept of multi-clouds and all that stuff, I mean, we have to also be aware that we could be boiling the ocean with this. Yet another variant of spread too thin, not really diving into it. So for example, right, as you help really transform an enterprise infrastructure, just keep it simple, into an Amazon-like experience for just a set of workloads, even providing an adjacent service without actually providing all the cloud services. If you just provide a DR with one click, but do it really well and do it with simple one-click delight. So someone could actually say, look, I actually just tested DR with one click in the middle of a day. People just don't do that today, right? So I think a couple of things.
They're taking on too much in IT.
Yeah, I mean,
you're saying if it's too thin, you're boiling over the ocean.
And I think on a fabric, which is what we are calling web scale, you have to be focused in terms of building these killer apps, right? And they have to come one at a time because these are complicated, deep apps that you have to do the right job on. But I think I would say that is like one dimension of our viewpoint. The other dimension of our viewpoint is, frankly, as we look at this full gamut of applications, I think there is going to be a trend that we will see in the next 5 years, which is, look, Amazon/Azure's value add, in addition to providing the IaaS landscape, is a bunch of services on top to help re-architect the application. But most of the apps moving to public cloud, from our perspective, are what we call lift and shift. And after a certain period of time, they will be re-architected, in addition to some new apps, right? I think there's an equal opportunity for enterprise apps, when they lift and shift to an on-premises version of an Amazon, to also be re-architected with a similar set of Amazon-like services, right? So you will see us, I think in general, I think people will ask for services on top of IaaS on the enterprise side to also come in as part of replatforming their application.
Right. So, Poojan, I want to give you the final word. We always love to talk to kind of the entrepreneurs. You're a co-founder in the Valley. We talk about software is eating the world. So, what lessons learned do you have? I mean, I remember meeting you said it was 3 people and a dog, around the corner from Nutanix's headquarters, kind of grew it, now, joining Nutanix. So, what lessons would you like to share with the audience?
Yeah, so I think for us, fundamentally, we were a bunch of insurgents, right? We built this platform, we got it to almost close to 1,000 customers, and we want the distribution scale that Nutanix now brings to get it in front of a lot more people. But really, that mindset with which we started the company is the same mindset I'm coming into Nutanix with. Because when I built Exadata for Oracle, at that time Oracle was making $10 billion on database, but that didn't stop us from building a yet another multi-billion-dollar initiative within the company. And that's the mindset that at least I am mentally bringing into Nutanix, so that we can basically go from here to 10x the size.
So culture fit is a huge issue.
It's a huge thing for us. Ambition and culture fit was the biggest reason, technology aside, everything aside, ambition and culture fit was a big reason for us, to come together.
And so how much did you guys sell the company for? Can you tell us? Undisclosed. I always try to get some data on the
He
cube.
just did this for his good looks.
Billions.
That's it.
Yeah, he's got a boat now, a Ferrari, driving down 101. No, congratulations. Great to see you guys. Have a great exit, and they got a great team in Nutanix. Nutanix, congratulations on
Very
success. And tell D-Raj we said hello.
Yeah, we will.
Okay, this is theCUBE live here with Nutanix here inside theCUBE at VMworld 2016. I'm John Furrier with Stu Miniman. We'll be right back with more. You're watching theCUBE.